when we are speaking about the market, usually, and especially enterprises in Balkan region, we think to approach it like this. Oh, I know the best next thing. So I know the best product, the best service I can provide, and I think I can do that. And then usually when we start conversation and start asking people, oh, perfectly fine. So, how do you know that? How do you know that is a specific problem that you're solving? Well, we think, we are very smart and we're very capable and we think this is the best solution for that. And that is perfectly fine because that inner voice is actually driving our, need to change something, needs to provide a specific solution for those things. But it doesn't mean that that is a valid problem that you are solving to the valid market. So it doesn't mean that if you need something that everybody else needs something. And then on a second layer of validation, we get to a point, oh, super fine. So, okay, what's the problem and who is your target market group? Everybody can use my product. And I guess you probably have heard that quite a lot of times when you speak about what do you do. Oh, everybody can buy it. Everybody can use my service. And that's probably true. Again, you're not lying, you're not being false, but not everybody will buy first. And not everyone will actually come to you and say, oh, I want to give you money for that, give me that product. But actually go through the certain process of that. So when we're speaking about the market, and just to get a couple of steps and things straight, we're first speaking about some people. Some bunch of people who are actually there to, they have a specific problem. They have a very specific and tangible problem regarding some certain situation. Give me any business. Really, any business that you know of. It can be literally any business. And the audience went wild.
A bakery.
A bakery. Thanks, Crystal.
You're welcome.
So, a bakery. Which problem is a bakery solving? Hunger. So, food. So people are hungry. They need to eat. We agree on that one. Yeah. Very specifically, people love to eat bagels. They like to eat, different kind of, sweet and savory bagels of this kind, that kind. It can be burek, it can be kifle, it can be whatever it might you need. So the problem that bakery is solving, they're solving the problem of hunger. More specifically, they are tackling some niche market around it. Because do you want to have a burek for lunch?
No.
I mean, you can have it, but do you really have it? Oh, I'm thinking about a lunch and let's go and eat burek or eat croissant with yogurt. Do we do that for lunch? No, not so much. But for breakfast, on the other side, yeah, you're gonna probably think about buying some burek or croissant for breakfast. Why? Because it's tackling a specific problem, which is in the morning people like to eat very heavily or very lightly. So depending on my choice, I might sell you a burek or I might sell you a kifla. Depending on the need and depending on the specific market. Some people like to eat muesli or like granola, whatever. And other people love to have a shake. So bakery is solving a problem of hunger, which is on a meta level. But then their target market is not people who buy NutriBullet or go and squeeze oranges and drink an orange juice for the breakfast. Why? Because they're selling different kind of product. So in order, if you're doing a marketing for a bakery, let's imagine that. So we're doing a marketing and communication for a bakery. We wouldn't say, yeah, let's target everyone in there. We were gonna say, let's try and tackle people for breakfasts because most usually, like statistically speaking, 70 to 80% of revenue of bakeries is actually in the morning hours, so around the breakfast. Why? Because people do come to bakery and buy the bagels, buy burek, buy whatever the need is, because they want to buy it in that given point in time, but not all the people. So if you're speaking about marketing, for instance, tackle to the group of people we are actually solving our specific problem to, we need to understand who they are, and what is their belief, what is their way of thinking, and why would they buy burek versus smoothie or burek versus anything else. But why? Because we are selling burek, for instance. Then when we got to figure out what is the actually problem/solution fit, which is at that given stage, we're identifying the problem. So cool, there is hunger. Perfectly fine, but let's narrow it down. So people are hungry in the morning, they need to eat breakfast. What do they, what people do usually do for breakfast? They can eat this, 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 and this. Oh, so we are here. We want to tackle people who eat burek for breakfast, and they're reselling burek as a product. So we're acknowledging there is a specific problem we want to solve, and then we have a solution for that. Solution, as you can see, can be many different things. Because if I'm hungry in the morning, I can pick my choice from having a burek, having a smoothie, or not eating at all, having an orange juice, or whatever. So there's a large number of different ways I can actually solve my problem. The trick is to figure it out. How can I get my buyer, how can I get my consumer to solve the problem through buying my product and my service in that way? Next step, when we got figured out about the who, so who is our buyer persona? Who are we selling to? But not only, speaking about Burek, not only getting about demographics or our need in people, but actually looking at a wider perspective of it, because we want to see what are their beliefs, where do they go out, what do they have for lunch, what movies are they watching or not, depending on the relevancy of a certain factor in calculating our ideal business buyer persona. The second thing is, what do? They each go from a point A to a point B. Do people, and this is a question that you need to answer, do people have the same decision-making process when buying a burek for breakfast or having a breakfast at all and buying a car? Probably not. If they do, they're probably something crazy about them. Because if they're buying car as they're buying burek, saying, I'm going to buy that car, they either have a shitload of money or don't know what they're doing. Or opposing side, they're buying burek as if they're buying the car, they're super picky, and there's a lot of people. And how much fat does this burek have, and in percentages, and did you get clarified by food association, and then getting into the details, which is again perfectly fine at a certain level. So you need to answer those questions. So people take certain path from point A to point B before buying the things. First step is actually knowing that they have a problem, because if people they don't know that they have a problem, the first step for you as a business is actually to have them understand they have a problem, or to have them actually, focus their problem, which can be here, to a specific solution that you can offer. And by starting to that, and B being a point when actually sell. So when actually sell and give it back and everything, but the whole journey doesn't end here. It actually continues from this point on. Because why? So going to a different market of grocery stores, you have these big chains like Maxi and Idea and Aroma and Aman and I don't know whichever they have, so like a chains. But you also have a local shops. So like your local shops, when you have like local like mom and pop shop, or like or granny selling something. So where would you go depending on what thing that you're buying? Do you go to both of them? Do you go only to big supermarkets, or you go only to the small ones? What do you do?
I guess it's a mixture.
It's a mixture.
Because if you want something fresh and like fresh stuff, which is like more organic, then you go to the Papa Mama shop and everything.
Yeah.
But then if you want something more like, for example, flour or like solid stuff where you can only find in supermarkets, then you go there. So it's like if you're going a giant grocery shopping list, then you have like two parts. So I guess people go to both. Or people who want to make it easy go to one, or people who are just like fanatics go to the other.
Go to the other.
Yeah.
If we put it if you put it in another plain field, do you go to market, like farmers market, piazza? Yeah? Who goes to piazza? Interesting. Why do you go to piazza if you can buy all those things in a market?
Because we see people. It depends when you're buying it. Are you going for a weekly shopping or just a quick buy?
But also I guess it's also self-consciousness that, because if, let's say for long chain markets, they usually get producers from the local markets, but then they increase their price. So if you think like subconsciously you want to have the local farmers to go to the market, so you just go there and give the cheaper price.
Yeah.
It's win-win for you, win-win for them.
It can be, for sure.
And we want to support
The local economy.
people forward.
So see the value. So why and especially in the market, I guess, for those of you who go on a regular basis, you go to the certain parts of the market. So you know exactly the stand where a certain granny is actually selling some food, or certain guy is selling your favorite goat cheese, or something. So to get back to the journey of your customer, of your buyer, it doesn't end when you sell. It continues because you start building a relationship with that person and with your buyer. So, you know, if you know, for instance, you know, my picked cheese farmer, like, switches the place or switches the market, oh, I would probably go to the another market and buy from them because I know the quality, I love the taste, I love the balance of whatever that's coming in the cheese, etc., etc. So it doesn't end there. But all what we are looking for are some number of steps. Some number of steps that I'm taking before buying the physical product and after buying. And all of that comes to the context. When we get the figure, you know, for our businesses, when we figure out the steps that our customer takes from point A to point B and beyond, what happens next is that we start matching different kind of tools and different kind of softwares and different kind of automations and different kind of processes, la 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 la. Why? Because we want to capture that behavior of our customer. For instance, do you know which are the most expensive spots in a supermarket for a product to be placed? In the level of the eyes. And which are the very pricey spots for product to be placed in the supermarkets? In the level of the eyes, on the edges. Yeah. So in the edges of the row, when there is a why, because by filming X thousands of people going through the market and their behavior, people don't buy like this, and they don't buy like this. They buy like this. They see the products in the row at the height. So those couple of rows in the middle, they're most expensive. Why? Because the product is going to be placed much better there. Or on the edges, because the traffic of people going around, there is a higher chance for you actually to buy the product if it's on edges, statistically speaking. And did you notice, again in supermarkets, speaking about food, so where are the bread, milk and meat sections? In the opposite parts of the supermarket. Why?
Because you can buy something else if you go to take only bread.
Yeah, I'm going to buy only bread. And how many of you came with 10 different items from a market when you went to buy only bread? That's the truth. So what are we seeing there? That this journey provides an X number of data so that we as a business can actually understand, capture by using some number of tools and actually start growth hacking. So hacking our way to, if 100 people came into the supermarket and only 10 of them bought and 2 of them returned to buy again. Oh, so if we understand what is happening here and we tracking, what can we do in that process? And this is for any kind of business. Do you do a product or a service or ID or massages or whatever it might be as a business, is the same logic all over again. So speaking about market, and that's where Lister pops in, about actually how can we better understand this part. So who are we actually dealing with and who are we trying to tackle in that process? So yeah, if you don't have any questions so far, I will give the floor to Lister to start the presentation for you.
I've been told some things about Servia to help me kind of be more on the level with you. So I've been told first that I'm meant to talk about experiences that I've had. So first I talk about experiences and then we talk about kind of a little bit more of the details in them. So I was born and raised in Vancouver and decided to make it my home, but I'm kind of a world traveler and I consider myself a digital nomad now. And part of that came from all of this experience that I had while working for Yelp. Does anyone know what Yelp is? Yes? Does anyone not know Yelp? No? Okay. So Yelp is, and it's okay to not know it. I actually love being here because I actually get to talk about this part of my life more. So Yelp is a local review website that grew really rapidly in America And then I became the first employee of Yelp in Canada. So I took an American company that was performing really well in it was like 10 cities in the US. And I was given the task of figuring out how to replicate the success in a different country. And they handed me, this was in 2009, so I'm dating myself a little bit. They handed me it was a Google Doc. They handed me a document that was like your survival kit. And the survival kit said things like, don't forget to shower and eat and do all these things. And I was like, why is this technology startup telling me to do things, for my body? And I realized really quickly that because they do that, because they make you work really hard. American-based company, startup, 2009, you're working like 80-hour weeks. It's a lot of work because the job that I had to do was figure out how to get people who barely trusted the internet, who adopted technology very slowly, who felt like they had enough ways of finding local businesses through other sources. I had to get them to build a habit around both using Yelp and contributing to Yelp. And it's where I learned all these things that we were just talking about who are these people and how do you get them to do the thing that you want them to do. Granted, at Yelp, I wasn't trying to get them to buy something. In fact, I think I was trying to get them to do something even harder than that. Not a one-time transaction. I was trying to get them to write reviews without being paid for local businesses that they weren't associated with, just to build up a community so that other people, like the rest of us, could just find those reviews. Kind of similar problem as something like TripAdvisor would have, right? But the difference is when it's local, you don't really feel the need to tell people about that local bakery or about the restaurant that you went to because you already know it and it's just for your friends or other locals, right? So it's a very different kind of challenge to be solving for. And through all that time, I started just with Vancouver and I took the playbook that Yelp San Francisco handed me and I threw it away because it wasn't working. And I started to realize that even though maybe outside everyone thinks that Canada and the US is really similar and we're the same people, it's not. There's subtle differences that made the playbook not work. And until I stopped just trying to get people over here because it was working, right? In America, people were just adopting the technology, starting to share their opinions, sharing their opinions really loudly on the internet. That wasn't the case in Canada. So I had to adjust everything. And it took me 6 months to realize I was doing it all wrong. Another 3 months to be okay with the fact that I was doing it wrong and okay with throwing out the book that somebody else had given me. And then another 6 months to figure out how to do it for Canada. And by then they said, okay, Crystal, you grew Vancouver from zero. There were 0 people. The .ca, which is Canada's .com, had just launched. And they said, you figured it all out. Could you go figure that out for the rest of Canada? We don't know anything about Canada and clearly you do. And I was like, well, I only know stuff about Vancouver. I don't really know stuff about Canada. How many people know much about Canada? A little bit? I know you're from Canada. Does that mean you might be from there?
We have a few partners.
Okay. So we might know that myself and this gentleman, I live in Vancouver, he lived in Toronto. That's a 5-hour flight. That takes, 4 days if you drove straight through to get there. It's a big, geographically diverse country with customs that might look the same because we share similar mass media, but not the same because regionally we're very different. We eat different things. We adopt technology in different ways. We have different values. So to figure out how to translate the new playbook that I made. Everyone knows what a playbook is? Am I saying a weird word? I know I said it and somebody was like, I don't know what that is. So a playbook is the guidelines. This is how you're gonna do it, the strategy, really. So I took my one in Vancouver and then went, how are we gonna do this? I have to do it in every major city. What will I do? So to get to know it, I went back to the basics of who is in this city, what would make them want to go on this journey of like sharing information, and how much faster can I get them to do it than what I got Vancouver to do it, because it took me too long in Vancouver, and you know, trying to change this from like 10 people from 100 to like 50 or like 100 out of 100 fast takes some serious growth hacking. But the first thing was identify the who. And when you can identify the who and you be specific about it, then all of a sudden other things kind of start making more sense. It's sort of like a bit of a ripple effect. You know, you change one thing in your life and other things start changing. Like right now I'm changing my habit of not drinking enough water to drinking water. So I have an app that reminds me every hour to drink water, and I do it because it's annoying me, so I drink more of the water. So figuring out how to change somebody's behaviors means that you need to figure out who they are first. So let's see. I pulled this off my Yelp profile. I haven't been on there for a little while. And these were all like events that we hosted to get to know, or some of them. I've hosted over 1,000 events of all different sizes, from like little events like this is what we would consider a small event, to like thousands of people. Conferences, meetups, just drinking, you name it, we did it. There's one picture here, this one. This is one of my like favorite moments. I'm in Salt Lake City, because I didn't tell you the part where then while I was building Yelp Canada and learning everything about that, they went, "We're in hyper growth mode, Crystal. Would you mind taking over the US West as well? It's not that big of a place. You'll be fine." And I went, okay. And all of a sudden I went from 5 or 4 time zones to 6. And I had diverse cities like Salt Lake City, which is where this is from. Does anyone know anything about Salt Lake City? So, Olympic Games, yeah. Olympic Games, also the headquarters of the Mormon Church. They don't drink in Salt Lake City. Well, some do now. That's a very new age thing to do. But they don't drink alcohol. So all the things that we knew to be true about building communities online and offline involved social contracts, which all involved drinking. This is the type of community that we were building. But Salt Lake City would not work for that. So this is us standing in the back of a pickup truck getting pies in our face at an event that we called Pie Day, because they don't drink. So we made a dessert event to get everybody to come, because they've replaced drinking with desserts. It's kind of a special part of my career. You might not all see it, but I hold it very near and dear in my heart. Or like, let's see, like having a party in, let's see, this is in Edmonton. This is the most northern city with a population of more than 1 million people. It's a big city in Canada, but it's the most northern that's big. And how they adopt technology, they don't. I made a huge mistake going there at the same time as I went to another city, and learning that just because 2 cities are near each other in proximity doesn't mean that the people in them are anywhere near the way that we think that they would be when we look at them from, let's say, the data. So this city, when I launched it at the same time as a city called Calgary. They're about 4 hours drive from each other. They're in the same province. They have the exact same industries. They have the exact same population, and they have the same number of people graduating from universities. I had all the demographics. And so I was like, yeah, we'll just launch it. But I didn't go there. I didn't go there until like I was hiring people and getting things like started, when I realized that the way that they actually like adopt technology and what they do for work and how they value their off time from work has nothing, it's not very Yelpy. It wouldn't work. So it took me like 3 years to turn this community into something, when it only took Calgary like 6 months to flip. So I should have known better, but I didn't. But failing is part of this, and the more you can kind of get used to like telling the stuff that you didn't do well, the better it is for everybody else. So I had lots of successes, lots of failures. Any questions so far? Because you know I told you I like questions. Yeah, please. Please, yeah.
I have one question. So, okay, so basically I give situation, I'm not good at wording this. So if let's say you find that you failed in the market. But then if, let's say, you are depending sort of solely on the market, how do you bounce back? Like, without losing what you have or without sacrificing your startup, your company, whatever, how do you bounce back? How do you balance it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think one of the things that every market is so like you might fail in one segment of that market, but you've never failed the whole thing. Even if like a big company like Coca-Cola, for example, they might fail horribly in one country and still be performing okay overall. So if we're talking about just one city or one kind of marketplace, there's always subsections of the market that you have not tapped. So if you know that you failed, you need to calculate like what made you fail. So make assumptions about like why you think that this group of people didn't like it, and find like, we call them the bright spots. Actually, it's bright spots instead of sweet. So there's sweet spot, but bright spot's actually a term from a book. Anyway, so this spot is like, this one little thing actually was working. How do I build that out a little bit more? So like, when I was failing in Edmonton, I wasn't totally failing. It's not like I had to pack up everything and go home or anything. The product was still there. We had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people at an event. So I had 5 people to work with. So I built from getting to know what these people needed and finding new messaging that would attract them and finding ways to turn them into the advocates to find new people. Because everywhere we go, people aren't just like isolated. They have friends that like, tell me this, you're all here at like a startup-ish kind of event in the startup ecosystem. Does everybody have friends that aren't here? People from other industries, people who would rather be at home right now, like watching television maybe. They might be like the person that you actually need, not the people that are in this room. So it's like it's hacking, figuring out what's the one little thing that I know to be true about this and how can I build on this. Even when you have like a horrible PR situation, even that you can rebuild from. Like I'm thinking about Uber right now. I can't help but think about Uber right now, okay? So everyone knows what Uber is? Yes? And that the CEO was asked to resign a couple weeks ago? Yeah? So they have no executive team right now. Uber has no one at the top right now. They're probably really freaked out, is my guess. But it also means that they have this opportunity, and I really hope they take it, to create a company environment that will attract people that have been hating on Uber for the last little while. Because there's people who have, me included, who have deleted the app and said that I will never get into an Uber again. And why would I do that? I don't believe in, I have, my value system. I don't believe in supporting people who harass employees. I don't believe in supporting businesses that aren't good in the world. I've known this for a while because I've also worked at other startups that took the Uber playbook and were implementing the same things. And I was seeing the same culture start to grow in there, like caring more about profits than people, not balancing that. Obviously, I'm a community builder, so I care a lot about like all the communities that are impacted. So looking at like, how do you create a company that's both good in the world and good for like the people that are working there? So I haven't been a fan for quite a while. I was at the very beginning because, it was something new and something awesome. And then I changed my tune once I started seeing some of the inner working stuff. So
I appreciate your way in why I'm doing this, but at the same time, they will not be doing anything because this is made in China, and then the little kids were making this t-shirt or the jeans or everything, whatever we do that is.
It's true.
What is behind.
I know.
But what I want to say, Uber is excellent service, and the fact that there is no management, that Uber is working, shows that it's excellent service, and you should want something else.
Yeah, there is. You're right. There is excellent stuff that they are doing, and I think that they can do better. So I'm excited to see like a new management team come in and look at those places where they're probably losing people because of things that they're not doing so well, and hack their way back to something that is better for all. So you're right, I like, yeah, it's like, it's hard. How do you make decisions on one thing or another? If I'm in a city and the only, like when we were talking about the farmer's market versus the grocery store, well, I'd prefer to support the local farmer, but if I really need the flour, I really need the flour. So what are you gonna do, right? But when I guess my opinion is when I can make that decision and can act with my wallet, I do, that's all. But that's my own personal thing. Okay, so does that help you with thinking? Okay, cool. So what did I put next here? Oh yeah, so how do you go about creating buyer personas? That's what we're talking about here. All of this in the who part. So I believe that the secret weapon is understanding individual experiences. So when we create, every time I've tried to create personas just based on demographic research, I find that it doesn't fit exactly the way that individuals are. So for example, who here is in the age demographic of a millennial? Yeah, okay. And wow, there's a lot of us. Hi, me too. And who here feels like they are all the stereotypes of a millennial? Oh, no one? Okay, okay, yeah. But you're here. I don't see you being very apathetic or sitting at home and only caring about your makeup today. Yeah, I see you here, right? So you're not the whole stereotype. We all might fit something, like clearly as a North American millennial, I care a lot more about my own personal value system and where I spend my money than maybe a millennial from somewhere else in the world. There, showing my colors. But I also work, you know, just as hard as anyone in my parents' era. In fact, my parents are the ones that tell me I work too hard. So I want to do something better for the world. So there's things that are true and there are things that are like not true. And the challenge with using just demographics is we can get ourselves stuck in situations where we make generalizations about who we're selling to without actually like verifying it by talking to real people. So usually around now I get the question like, but it's so hard, like talk to real people. That means that I would have to like go and talk to them and listen to their opinions and then like not feel like I'm being judged about my product, or keep my mouth shut and not be like, you're wrong, my product's gonna solve your problem. We actually need to go and just listen really openly about what people are saying. And it's amazing what people tell you. The other thing I see happen is when we start to understand the individuals, we can start to not only see the who, but like how we need to talk to them. Because we can totally get the demographic right and totally know that our product fits what they need. But if we aren't good at talking in the language that will appeal to their problem or their solution, then we fail anyway. And it's amazing how often I've seen, so I started my career in sales. I was a makeup artist and I worked in cosmetics. I worked at cosmetic counters. I put makeup on women. And I realized really soon that if you were able to say compliments in a certain way, you sell more lipstick. So I started learning how to say more compliments in a certain way, sold more lipstick. It was great. And I realized from those talking to one-on-one people that you could actually like start to affect whole marketing campaigns. You could start to use language from individuals to speak more to like the one than to the many. You start to talk about like the niche instead of the average. And when we start to do that, and we start to talk about one little thing, like even inviting me and talking about like my experience is like saying, this is one little experience. It gives a different perspective. And you can use that perspective when you're thinking about all the other perspectives and all the other opinions that you're gathering right now to make your own decisions for your business, which means your business will end up looking different than anyone else's. Your marketing messages look different, the customer journey looks different, because you're basing it all on what real people are telling you. And therefore, no one can steal that away. You can't be lost to like a competitor because of that. If all you have that you're going on is like price and the solution, but not the relationship, not the actual like the sentiment that someone has, anybody could undercut you on that. So you have to be able to like really understand your own specific market. And I've seen this work for B2B and B2C. It doesn't seem to really matter. Thoughts or challenges to my idea that people are the most important? Yes? I see it. It's okay. Ask. Are you a plant? Do they plant you here to ask questions?
No, I'm just very
Yeah, of course.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I love it.
Well, my question is, so when you said about demographics, so you gave the fact that millennials and the X generation, the Y generation. So if let's say for like a basic product, but then they have 3 different, like their product is very specific, but then they have 3 different demographics which could use it to help them in different ways. So, but then they're in different generations, in different age groups. So how do you like approach it without losing one another? Because if you lose one, then you sort of lose a whole market.
You have to blend. Like so if I'm understanding, you've got 3 different kind of customer groups, and they need to be spoken to in different ways for them to understand. Because I can't talk to my grandma the same way that I talk to my friend, or else my grandma's gonna slap me. So if, I swear. What you need to do, I think, and what I see often, is you need to create like communication that's like the one-to-one, so you can show that you're like, you understand the problem on this level, and then some things that show that your marketing approaches, like appeals to them, and only for them. So you start segmenting. Like, for example, maybe you only send out your email newsletter to the grandma generation. Actually, you don't send the email to the grandma generation. My bad. Yeah, you give it to them, right? And you send the email to the mom and dad generation, and you Instagram it to the millennial. Same message, different things.
But is there a way you can mesh like maybe the time base together for a better impact?
Sometimes. I think at the beginning, it's better, personally, I think it's better to keep the segments separate until until you're sure that there's actually a similarity and that you can speak to all 3 at one time. So you really have to listen before you can decide on that one, And maybe only, like the Venn diagram, there's like one part where there's the overlap, that might be the only marketing message that's going out, is that one little piece. Yeah, cool. So I thought that I would, let me see what I wrote here. I thought that I would share an example from Yelp. Yeah,
I had a similar challenge in my industry, it's personal development. Basic programming. And many people are coming there with different ideas why they're coming. Someone wants to develop their personal relationships, family issues, or something like that. And others are coming because they want to improve their business. But usually they came with one goal, but they finish with many other things fulfilled. So how to communicate? Because sometimes some people are businessmen, but their goal is to develop relationships at home.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, I think I'm a life coach too. So like I hear the feeling, but one of the things to do is to think, when we're thinking about like a funnel like this, we're thinking like, what's the problem that will just get them into point A here? We don't have to think like, what are they gonna get over here? They would have forgotten what they're gonna get over here. All we're doing is trying to lead them in. So what's the question? What's the pain that you're solving just to get them to want to take the next action, not all the actions. Because you're right, like a lot of things that we provide, it's not, I was saying we were having a meeting earlier and I'm like, it would be so easy if every product was like the one and done. They buy it once, they're gone. You don't have to like, keep like supporting them, doing anything with customer support with them. You just kind of sell them and away they go. Nothing else happens. Be kind of easy. But when we're talking about something where like the relationship goes longer and there's more things that will happen, we can't give them all of the like features and benefits up front because we wear people out. We wear out their attention. They don't hear what we're saying. They missed the point that we wanted. So we have to be clearer about the one thing we want them to do, which is why things like landing pages end up being an effective way, because you can just target that one little segment and share one little thing that gets them to the exact same place that everybody else is going to get to too, but just in a different kind of way. So yes, so I would say when you're doing like a personal kind of product, I have found this is kind of interesting. So does everyone have like a favorite book or a favorite movie that they relate to, they love it? That book or that movie wasn't written for you, right? It was written about someone else who might have been kind of like you, but something, I always think it's like something quirky about a character or the plot or something caught you and it made you like that character. If the character was average, if the character was like, the millennial, it's just like every millennial, first of all, psychopath, but like here's like a bland kind of character, you can't relate to it. It's almost like you need to have like a feeling like it's about the one person and more people feel like they can relate because there's like a personal experience. It's also why we see a lot of things around like storytelling when we get into marketing and content, because even though it's like your story that we're telling, other people feel like they can relate at least to a sliver to it. And so they feel like they can come a little bit closer in. So thinking about like how do you use like your marketing and your communications strategies to speak to like the one persona when you're talking to them. I even have, for the new business that I'm developing, I have my personas that I've created from real people, and I named them Lisa and Amanda, which are very Canadianish names. And Lisa and Amanda, I have a picture of each one of them. And when I get ready to write my marketing or an Instagram post or anything, I'm like, what would Lisa want me to say right now? And I just talk to Lisa. And then all of a sudden, all the other people who are only like a little fraction of Lisa, they come too. So look for like the extreme of it and attract the other 90% who are like, yeah, I want a little bit of that too. It's kind of interesting that way. Flip it around a bit, see what happens. Everything's an experiment in startups, right? Okay, a Yelp example, be okay? Yeah, okay. So the Yelp Elite Squad is the program that we created to, number one, be the real engine to write reviews on the website, and number two, to really understand who our real target market at Yelp is, or was. I don't work there anymore, obviously. So the Elite Squad, and this is, I'll share, this is in San Francisco. These are balloons that say Yelp, and this is Yelp Man that was just made up for this particular event. And this was my first event as a Yelp employee. I got sent down to San Francisco to help with this. I brought my husband. He's in this picture. This picture was on the website for years. I think it's kind of funny that he's in it, and I'm not. When the Yelp Elite Squad was created, it happened, the Yelp Elite Squad's like the most active contributors on the site, right? We all have this, who are like daily actives or monthly actives. We looked at the Yelp Elite Squad as like a selection of that kind of group, sort of the role models or like the representatives of the whole. And when we were thinking about why do we have this Elite Squad, it's because it came organically. We started in San Francisco, they started throwing parties because that was a way, just like we're here in an event together, we're all together, things happen, we meet people like it, they come back to the site. That was sort of how it started. What started to be more interesting though is that at Yelp, the Elite Squad was like a nominated process. You had to, have been a good writer on Yelp, been, someone who was balanced in their opinions, someone who contributed in a good way, like not somebody who was harassing others or doing mean things. And what ended up happening is it started to become this cycle. Every time we added someone new to the elite squad, we learned something new about the whole community. We learned something new about the people who weren't writing anything. The people like maybe all of you who maybe have used it but not actually written anything, because only a small percentage of people actually like contribute to things online. But as we learned that, we learned how to do things better, like not only what events to do for our retained community, which are the elites, but also what kind of marketing campaigns to do to attract more of the visitors to the site, what campaigns to do to attract more advertisers to the site. And honestly, even to this day, it continues to go in a one-by-one kind of fashion. So we host parties for like 50 people sometimes still. And we do things where it's like a super exclusive, meetup where there's only 5 or 6 people. We show up even when it seems like we shouldn't, because Yelp's a huge site. And it kept reinforcing that we would learn more from having those people on the ground and getting to know them personally, instead of just like looking at the metrics. The metrics is more like a second level to see if our anecdotal information was actually true. And I see other big companies doing this today. So I used to be a super host for Airbnb. And Airbnb, every 6 months or so, somebody would call me from the regional community manager from like the west coast of the States. And there's tons of super hosts in that region, but they would call me and they would ask me questions about Vancouver. They'd ask me questions about what it was like to be a super host. They'd ask me questions about how they could help me. And it was an awesome, like extra kind of perk to feel like you had an advocate inside their organization. Airbnb is huge. They don't need to do that. They barely need to speak to anyone and the whole engine will keep going. But the whole engine will just keep going to a point until it's no longer valid, right? Until it breaks. So seeing that some bigger companies still choose to do this, to me is quite, I guess it's quite like heartening that we're still looking at the individuals. And I think it's even more important, obviously, when we're just starting something to know. Because what success needs to look like when we're just starting something is quite small, right? We don't need to be Airbnb size this year. Right? We just need to get enough to grow to the next stage. So really all we need to know is that one little target market. And if we don't win in that tiny, tiny, tiny place, it's okay. We'll just try another way with another small little market. I also started noticing with my Yelp example here that eventually this one market was like, we wanted to attract urban professionals aged 26 to 32. That's a very tight market, right? Yeah.
Sorry, so is this your purpose of this presentation is to promote Yelp?
No, I haven't worked at Yelp since 2012.
But you're doing a good job.
Oh.
Well, it's excellent because I see it as very good. This is exactly what you're talking about. The small groups, whatever they're doing here in big companies, they're doing those small good things.
Yeah.
But you're also doing a good job for it. So I thought, even if you're doing it for Yelp, it is excellent because you're sharing the knowledge.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
It's very good. So I will download the Yelp.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Wow. Yeah. It's funny. I didn't. And not around here. I know. Much to my chagrin, I was like, "Where am I going to go for dinner?" Uh-oh, I'm going to have to find a different way here. I know. Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, I do. I have Swiss Contact. They've helped me with everything. There you go. But what I think is why I say it to startups is when I left Yelp in 2012, different big startups were like, come help me come move to New York, come move to San Francisco, move to London. I was like, I'm going to stay in Vancouver and I'm going to help the startups, just like you guys. I'm going to help the little startups figure out how to do this for themselves because I'm really tired of seeing just big companies be successful and little startups not being able to have that same kind of level of understanding or thinking that big companies can do it, but they can't, because big companies have all this data, they have all this money, but really, they're still talking to people one-on-one all the time. So clearly they're not doing anything that's that different. They're just really getting to know people. So yeah, so I've worked with like 50 plus startups now in Vancouver, teaching these same things and actually helping them figure out what a program could be for them. So a lot like that, yeah. I just don't talk about those ones because, well, no one really knows those ones. So if I'm like, hey, my best helper, you're all gonna be like, what's that? Just because it's great in Vancouver doesn't mean you'll know it here. Anyway, okay, so that's my Yelp example. So the biggest thing I think that we learned at Yelp, and I have another example, is meeting customers where they are. So I see this a lot where we go, well, I want them to come to my platform, or I want them to come buy my product over here. Or I heard something the other day that was like, I really like Facebook, so I'm doing everything I am on Facebook. I was like, not me, that's someone told me that here. And I was like, well, are your customers on Facebook? Like, I know they are there because like everybody's there, but are they making buying decisions there? Is that the best place for you to interact with them? Is that the best place for you to get to know them? Or are they also somewhere else? And so not choosing places where you want to be, choosing places where they are to get to know who they are, so that you can go and like engage with them there. So for example, any questions about that or thoughts? Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to find where they are? So if they're not on Facebook, they are.
Yeah, kinda. So, yeah. So I think the biggest one is you start. So it seems very simple. You just start asking. Like somebody asked me today. Someone asked me today, like, do I have an iPhone? And I was like, yeah, I have an iPhone. And they're like, how do you use it to do this? And I'm like, cool, you're doing customer discovery on the spot. That's perfect. Everyone you ask is like, so when you're not on Facebook, like, how are you spending your time online? Oh, you actually have a cool necklace on, and we have the same Converse. We both have red Converse. Not on today, but I have those ones. So I'd be like, okay, so you have the necklace I want. So where did you get that? Right? And then all of a sudden leads to, where do you do online shopping? Oh, what sites do you like better than the other sites? Oh, how often do you go on there? And all of a sudden you're in this dialogue of figuring out like where they actually are, without having to be too stocky or too focus groupy. So, focus groups, they're good, except for you can't really get them in their natural habitat, right? You're bringing people together and then saying, sit down and tell me about this thing, which is an unnatural kind of way. But if you just go out into the world and meet them where they are, all of a sudden they share things with you that they wouldn't normally share. So, for example, I was working with this organization called CHIMP, which is called the Charitable Impact Organization. It's an online platform. It makes it possible for, do you know it? You don't know it, okay, good. I was like, whoa, that's weird. It's a Canadian organization, and it's a charity, and it lets you donate to any charity in Canada. That's its thing, so it's a platform. And we were trying to make like giving a kind of a habit. Like, how do we get people just to give $5, every month to a charity that they like? How do we get people just to support more? And specifically, how do we get millennials to support charities more? Because in Canada, what we were seeing is that there's a trend that looks like people who are in the evening of their life, people who are senior citizens, basically, they're donating a lot. They're creating legacy. But millennials in Canada aren't thinking that like they have any capacity to give. And we wanted to change that and figure out a way to do that. But like bringing millennials in and going, what charity would you like to give to? And like, what charities do you currently give to? And what makes you want to give is like kind of a crappy conversation to have. Nobody wanted to have it. It was boring. It didn't create like an experience. So instead, we created this whole campaign with local beer festivals. So millennials love beer festivals in Canada. So we created a charity giving campaign where the beer festival and its sponsors would give money to be donated. And we turned all that money into these tokens that we called charitable impact tokens. And we gave one to every person who came into the festival and said, it's worth $5. And then at every stalls. So, you know, beer festival, different breweries everywhere, right? It's just like a festival in a park. Every single brewery chose a different charity that they liked, a local charity. And we put like a little box in front of it, and the people could choose which charity to give to. So we created this element of giving without them having to like actually have dollars for it. And then we analyzed which charities were they giving the most to, and then we could start making some assumptions about why. So we found out that, like, you know, most people give to animal-related charities. Animals are first, diseases are second, and children are third, all at a beer festival, right? There's like 5,000 people that came through on this one particular one that I'm showing. So this one I'm seeing here is like Vancouver Orphan Kitten Rescue Association. They rescue kittens and then they adopt them out to families. I feel like you guys would like that. Anyway, so by doing that, we were able to engage in a conversation with just regular people where they were, granted they'd had a beer in them, about what was really important to them. So we also set up like a camera, and we filmed them talking about like what was important to them as they were making donations. So we did all of our customer discovery at a festival and did something good, because I think we ended up donating like, I don't know, like $10,000 or something to charities, which is awesome. So it was like a win-win-win. And when I would do things with them at first with Chimp, they were like, no, they're really old school. So they were like, no, just bring them into the office and talk to them here. So I tried, right? I brought them in, I tried to do it that way, but I didn't get the same kind of like emphasis from them. So we started doing things like this. We then converted the people here onto like our online platform. So we developed our community that way. We invited them out to other charity events. We invited them to start up like giving accounts on our website. And then because of that, they started donating themselves because they'd had that like little interaction. So things that seem really small, they end up scaling. That's kind of the crux of it all. Any thoughts or questions about this one? Yeah, I like this interaction. Hi. Hi, nice to meet you.
I'm glad you are here, and I'm glad you speak about the children. I think you have some experience with creative workshops for children, and especially from my experience when I was on Charity Bazaar, I saw that they mostly was interesting for some small products, not for some creative bigger thing.
I'm confused about workshops for kids, and is this your business that you're building? Okay, can you give me a little bit more context about what you're building?
That workshop is a combination of creative handmade work with parents.
Okay.
So it's focuses on communication.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the question is how to do things for the kids, like how to engage them on.
Experience of engaging and understanding what they really need.
So first I think whenever you're interacting with like the parent and the child, you're really interacting with the parent, but the child is the one that's making the decision. So what I've seen, that so you've got two kinds of things that you're trying to analyze. How will the parent make the decision to do this, and what will make the child want this? Like, why does every little girl want everything frozen? And why do parents keep buying everything frozen for them? Kids are making the decision for the parent.
I must add that when I was at the Charity Bazaar, I saw that one kid came 3 times to the other person who was something else, and I don't know if it was a boy or a girl, but he took one time grandmother, grandfather, and parents to show them what he or she wants, but they didn't want.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, so there's a lot of things at play when we're talking about family dynamics that are not going to be solved when it comes to just marketing, because what do we know, and what do we know about how parents like teach their children? So this might be a case of, you know, when I hear that, I hear, maybe this kid always does this, brings everybody around, but he's been told or she's been told, no, 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 this is not, you're not allowed to have this. So selling, like clearly there was interest on the kid's part, but it might not actually have anything to do with what was being sold or how it was being sold. It could easily just be between the family dynamic about what's appropriate and what's not. So in that situation, I'm like, it would be hard to like assess unless you were able to, I would go with the simple like ask a question, right? Like ask the parent or the grandparent, like, oh, it seems like your child is really interested in this, you know, what, can I share anything else with you about it? And they might be like, no, 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 we're not buying this, right? Like, and it might just be because of that kid. So I don't know if like having like, I don't know if it is as easy as just working with like one person, right? If it's all just parents walking by and not the kids grabbing them, you're speaking to the parents about how the kid will like this thing, right? You're helping them make a decision about why their kid would be interested in this, and they're making a more rational decision, right? Whereas a kid doesn't have all the information. They don't know how much money it is. They don't know if they've had too many toys today. They don't know any of the stuff. So it's kind of tough. I think there are ways of doing it, but it's like, it's that repeat. Like that kid sounds pretty smart to me that he brought his like family there 3 times, right? Like, so the classic marketing stuff is like, tell them something 7 times and then they will buy. You just needed 4 more. So maybe getting an email address and hitting the parents up like 4 more times might have, 7 times is the like, the kind of how many times you need to hear something or be exposed to something in order to actually like make a decision. Yeah, that's kind of a magic number. Is it always true? No, because like I said, it's statistics, but like it's still, you can use that as kind of a marker. Yeah. Okay. I feel like, do we have, how much more time? Okay. Okay. So what do I have left? So I have some now what's. Because I wasn't sure how far everybody's company was, so I just thought I'd put some summary stuff together. So number 1, the first thing to do when you're figuring out like who is do research. So before you go and start talking to people, get the assumptions out of the way, right? You're gonna do it anyway. Figure out like, you know, who do you actually think the customer is? Where do you think they're hanging out? What do you think they're doing right now to solve the problem that they have? And what else do you think they're doing with their time? And I'm going to totally recommend writing it all down so that when you start to talk to people, you can look back and refer back and see how close your assumptions about where they were are right from the beginning. Next, this is the monitor and observe phase, where you learn and study their behaviors. So you go out and you be with those potential customers that you're finding, and you start to ask them the questions, right? You start to find out, you find out one, it's like a little breadcrumb trail, right? You find out that they're actually not on Facebook, that they're on Instagram, so you start investing more of your time on Instagram. You start to realize that these are the other like hashtags that they're following, so you start to develop a bigger kind of persona of their whole life just by observing what they're doing. You also observe things like what they say, how they say it, what time they say it at, what they care about. These are all things that you can kind of like internalize to actually, you know, make your marketing, make your product better. And then I put this in here because this is the time when it's usually really frustrating, because we need to be okay with being really wrong. And if we're not okay with being wrong, we're gonna end up alienating the people that we're trying to build something or make something for, and you know, ruin that whole thing that you're trying to do, like the build a business thing. So listen without judgment. You have to just be like someone who will accept all the feedback as it's coming in. Adjust every time you see that there's like a behavior or something that you kind of had wrong, adjust it. What I learned, back to that example of like putting lipstick on people, when you have like a big group of people around you, or even when we go network on the terrace, if startups are your community that you're trying to actually build, right? If you're trying to build something else like doctors or something, this is not the right place to test your idea, right? or test your messaging. But you can tweak it each time, right? You can tweak that. Everyone's thought about like elevator pitches and things, right? Like tell me about yourself or tell me about your company. You can tweak it each time you're talking to somebody in the real world. Even just talking to you or talking to you, 1, 2, I can use both of that information that it landed better on you to adjust what then I say on my Instagram, my Instagram thing tomorrow or my email marketing. Just adjust every single time. You're like at this stage, you're sort of like a endless amount of curiosity. All you want to know is what these people really want from you. And then you can apply what you've learned minus the assumptions that you had. And hopefully with that, you can see that it's like okay to like be totally wrong at the beginning and like iterate what you thought you knew, because it really, that first little inkling of what you think who it is probably not quite true. And that's all I have, and I really want more questions. Thanks. In case you want to connect with me or ask questions and you don't want to ask here, that's my email. I'm pretty full on until like I get home at the end of the weekend. So if I don't respond to you right away, that's just my nature. Yeah.